It was the kind of evening where the world felt softer than usual. The sky had already dimmed into gentle shades of blue, and the day seemed to yawn as it slowly came to an end. Somewhere down a quiet street, under the warm glow of flickering streetlights, a small shop remained open just a little longer than the rest. Inside that shop stood a pajama salesman, hurried.com, and content carefully folding fabric that felt like a promise of rest. He didn't sell pajamas the way others sold things. Each pair carried a story, stitched with comfort, patience, and the simple hope of a good night's sleep. Some were meant for tired parents who hadn't rested properly in years. Others were for children who needed a little extra bravery before bedtime, and a few were for lonely souls who just wanted the quiet reassurance of something soft and warm at the end of a long day. As the door chimed open and closed, the salesman greeted every customer with the same gentle smile, never rushing, never pushing. He listened more than he spoke. In his presence, worries seemed to loosen their grip, shoulders relaxed, and voices grew quieter. Outside, the world kept spinning, but inside the shop, time moved slowly, like a deep breath held just long enough to feel safe. This is not a story about big adventures or loud moments. It's a story about the comfort of routine, the kindness of small gestures, and the magic hidden in ordinary nights. As the pajamas are folded, sold, and finally worn, the day begins to fade, and sleep draws closer, wrapping everything in calm. So settle in. Let the noise of the world drift away. Follow the pajama salesman into a story where nothing dramatic happens and where that is exactly what makes it perfect for rest. The pajama shop sat on the quietest street in town, the kind of street people only noticed when they had nowhere else to be. During the day, it looked ordinary, just a narrow storefront with a faded sign and a single display window, but at night, when most shops pulled down their shutters, it seemed to glow with a gentle, welcoming light. The warm yellow bulbs inside made the glass shimmer softly, as if the shop itself were breathing slowly, preparing for sleep. Inside, the pajama salesman moved calmly between wooden shelves stacked neatly with folded pajamas of every color and pattern imaginable. There were soft blues, the shade of early morning skies, gentle grays like rain clouds drifting away, and warm creams that looked like they belonged beside a quiet fireplace. He handled each pair with care, smoothing out wrinkles, aligning sleeves, and folding them just right. There was no rush in his movements. There never was. The salesman was a man of unremarkable appearance, which somehow made him easy to trust. He wore simple clothes, his hair always neatly combed, his expression calm and kind. People often forgot exactly what he looked like once they left the shop, but they never forgot how they felt while they were there. Lighter, slower, as if the world outside had been turned down a notch. He believed pajamas were more than clothing. To him, they were companions for the night, quiet guardians that stood between a restless mind and peaceful sleep. Every evening before opening the shop, he would stand still for a moment, hands resting on the counter, and take a deep breath. In that moment, the noise of the day faded, and the shop became what it was meant to be, a place of rest. The bell above the door chimed softly as the first customer of the evening stepped inside. She was a woman with tired eyes and a heavy coat, the kind worn by someone who carried long days on their shoulders. She hesitated just inside the doorway, as if unsure whether she belonged there. "Good evening," the pajama salesman said gently. The woman nodded, her shoulders relaxing almost. Without her noticing, she wandered toward a shelf filled with soft cotton pajamas, running her fingers across the fabric. She didn't say much, and neither did he. There was no need. After a few quiet minutes, she chose a simple pair in pale blue. "These are very comfortable," the salesman said, his voice low and reassuring. "They're good for long nights." The woman smiled faintly. "I think that's exactly what I need." Seepate thanked him and left, the bell chiming softly behind her. The salesman watched the door for a moment after it closed, then returned to his work, folding another pair with steady hands. As the evening continued, more customers arrived. A young father came in looking uncertain, holding his phone tightly as if expecting it to buzz at any moment. He explained, quietly, that his child had trouble sleeping. "She says the dark feels too big," he said. The pajama salesman nodded thoughtfully and led him to a shelf near the back. He picked out a small pair of pajamas decorated with tiny stars that seemed to glow softly even under the shop lights. "Sometimes," the salesman said, "it helps to wear something that reminds you the night can be gentle too." The father smiled, a real smile this time, and thanked him more than once before leaving. Later came an older man who said he didn't sleep much anymore. He didn't explain why, and the salesman didn't ask. He simply listened and offered a heavier pair of pajamas, lined with soft fabric, meant to feel like a steady, comforting weight. As each customer came and went, the shop filled with a quiet rhythm. The bell chimed. Footsteps moved slowly across the wooden floor. Pajamas were folded, chosen, and carried out into the night. Outside, the town settled into silence. Streetlights hummed faintly, and windows went dark one by one. Between customers, the pajama salesman sometimes paused to look around the shop. He loved this hour most, the space between evening and night, when the world seemed willing to slow down. He adjusted a stack that had leaned slightly to one side and straightened a sign that read, "Sleep well, take your time." He remembered opening the shop years ago, though the memory felt distant, like a dream he'd once had and half forgotten. He hadn't chosen the location because it was busy or profitable. He chose it because it was quiet, because people who found their way here were usually the ones who needed it most. The bell chimed again, and this time a young woman stepped inside, shaking rain from her umbrella. She looked around with curiosity, then laughed softly. "I didn't even know this place was here," she said. The salesman smiled. "It tends to appear when it's needed." She raised an eyebrow but didn't question him. She browsed slowly, eventually picking out a pair of pajamas covered in small, uneven stripes. "They look cozy," she said. "They are," he replied. "They're good for nights when you want to let go of the day." She nodded, as if that made perfect sense. When she left, the rain outside had softened to a light drizzle. The pajama salesman closed the door gently behind her and checked the clock. It was nearly time. He moved toward the counter and turned the sign in the window, from open to almost closed. He didn't rush to lock the door. There was always the chance that one last person might need a little comfort before the night fully settled in. As if on cue, the bell chimed one final time. This customer was different. He didn't browse or linger. He stood quietly near the door, hands in his pockets, looking around as though he had wandered in by accident. "Can I help you?" the pajama salesman asked. The man hesitated. "I'm not sure," he said slowly. "I couldn't sleep. I just kept walking, and then I saw the light." The salesman nodded. "That happens." They stood in silence for a moment, the shop filled only with the soft hum of the lights. Finally, the salesman reached for a pair of pajamas, folded neatly behind the counter. They were plain, simple, and warm. "These are for nights when nothing needs to be solved," he said. "Just rested." The man took them, his expression easing. He didn't say much as he paid, but when he left, his steps were slower. Carmardot the pajama salesman locked the door and turned off half the lights, leaving the shop bathed in a dim, peaceful glow. He folded one last pair of pajamas, set them carefully on the shelf, and exhaled. Outside, the town slept inside. The shop rested too. And somewhere, Aspanula's pajamas were pulled on and lights were turned off. The night began to do what it did best, the world quietly, gently, until morning. Morning arrived quietly on the small street, as if it didn't want to disturb anyone. The sun rose behind thin clouds, spreading a soft silver light rather than a bright glare. The pajama shop remained closed, its window dim, the sign turned neatly to closed. Inside, everything was still. The shelves stood patiently, stacks of folded pajamas, waiting without urgency. The shop always felt most peaceful in these early hours, when the world outside was waking slowly and no one yet needed anything. The pajama salesman arrived just before noon, as he always did. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and paused for a moment with his hand still on the handle. He liked to stand there and listen to the quiet hum of the building, to the faint echo of the street beyond the glass. It helped him leave the noise of the day outside. He removed his coat, hung it carefully behind the counter, and began his routine. The lights were switched on one by one, never all at once. The curtains were adjusted so that sunlight filtered gently into the shop. He walked the length of each shelf, straightening piles, smoothing fabric, and checking that everything was exactly where it should be. There was comfort in repetition. Each movement reminded him that not everything in the world needed to change quickly. Some things worked best when they stayed the same. By the time the clock chimed softly, signaling the shop was open, the first customer of the day was already peering through the window. She was an elderly woman, with white hair pulled neatly and up, her posture upright despite the cane she leaned on. When the salesman opened the door, she smiled as if she'd been waiting for him specifically. "Good afternoon," she said. "Good afternoon," he replied warmly. She moved slowly through the shop, examining each shelf with careful attention. "I've been sleeping lightly," she said after a while. "Waking up before I'm ready." The salesman listened, nodding gently. He selected a pair of pajamas made from a soft, breathable fabric and handed them to her. "These are good for peaceful mornings," he said. "They don't rush you awake." She smiled, clearly pleased. "That sounds lovely." When she left, the shop felt warmer somehow, as though her calm had lingered behind. Throughout the afternoon, customers came and went in an unhurried flow. A college student looking exhausted chose pajamas with simple patterns and deep pockets. A couple shopping together laughed quietly as they debated colors. A man who worked night shifts asked for something that would help him sleep during the day. The pajama salesman treated each one the same with patience, attention, and an understanding that sleep was personal. What worked for one person might not work for another. His job wasn't to rush them into a choice, but to help them find what felt right. As evening approached, the rhythm of the shop shifted. The light outside softened, shadows grew longer, and the familiar quiet returned. The salesman brewed himself a small cup of tea and stood behind the counter, watching the street as people passed by more slowly. Now, it was during this quiet stretch that the door chimed again. This time, a child stepped inside, holding tightly to the hand of an adult. The child's eyes were wide with curiosity, taking in every detail of the shelves, the lights, the colors. "I don't like bedtime," the child said suddenly. The adult looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry," they said. "They don't sleep easily." The pajama salesman crouched slightly, so he was at the child's level. "That's okay," he said softly. "A lot of people don't." The child studied him for a moment, then nodded. "It's too quiet," they said. He thought for a moment, then led them to a small shelf near the window. He picked up a pair of pajamas covered in tiny drawings, clouds, trees, and little houses. "These are good for imagining," he explained. "When it's quiet, you can make your own sounds." The child smiled, clearly intrigued. The adult thanked him, relief visible on their face, and they left together, the bell chiming softly behind them. As the night deepened, the pajama salesman began preparing for closing. He turned the sign to almost close and dimmed a few of the lights. The shop took on its familiar nighttime glow, calm and inviting. He always found this hour special. The world outside slowed, and inside the shop, time seemed to stretch gently. He folded a few remaining pajamas, his hands moving with practiced ease. Each fold felt like a small act of care, a promise of rest waiting to be fulfilled. The bell chimed again. A woman entered quietly, her movements careful, as though she didn't want to disturb the air. She wandered the shop without speaking, her eyes thoughtful. When she finally approached the counter, she hesitated. "I'm not sure why I'm here," she admitted. The pajama salesman smiled kindly. "Sometimes that's the best reason." She laughed softly. "I suppose I just want to feel settled." He nodded and selected a pair of pajamas made from a soft, weighty fabric. "These are good for that," he said. "They remind you that it's okay to stop." She held them for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, that feels right." When she left, the night outside was deep and still. The streetlights cast gentle pools of light on the pavement, and the world felt hushed. The pajama salesman locked the door and turned off the remaining lights, leaving only the soft glow near the window. He stood in the quiet shop for a moment, listening to the stillness. This was his favorite time, when the day had ended and the night was fully at work. He knew that somewhere, people were slipping into the pajamas he'd sold. Children were curling up in bed. Tired minds were slowing. The world, piece by piece, was settling. He gathered his coat, turned off the final light, and stepped outside, locking the door behind him. The shop rested now, ready for another evening, and as the night wrapped itself around the town, sleep arrived gently, just as it always did. The night air was cool and calm as the pajama salesman walked home along the quiet streets. The town had settled into its familiar rhythm of rest. Windows glowed faintly behind curtains, and the sound of distant footsteps faded quickly into silence. Every step he took felt unhurried, as though the night itself had slowed time to a gentler pace. His home was a small apartment above a bakery that smelled faintly of bread, even after dark. He unlocked the door softly, careful not to make unnecessary noise, and stepped inside. The space was simple but warm, neatly arranged furniture, a small lamp by the window, and a chair that seemed to invite stillness. He prepared a light supper and ate slowly, listening to the quiet hum of the building. Afterward, he changed into his own pajamas, plain, soft, and well-worn. They were not from his shop. These were older, familiar, shaped perfectly to his comfort. He believed that what you wore to sleep should feel like a gentle memory. Before bed, he sat by the window for a while, watching the moon rise between drifting clouds. He liked this moment best, the space between being awake and falling asleep. When thoughts softened and the world felt safe enough to let go, sleep came easily to him. Morning followed without announcement. Pale light slipped through the curtains, and the sounds of early deliveries and quiet footsteps rose from the street below. The pajama salesman woke rested, as he always did, and lay still for a moment, listening to the new day begin. He moved through his morning routine with care. Tea brewed slowly. The radio stayed off. He liked to keep his mornings quiet, preserving the calm he carried from sleep. When he dressed and prepared to leave, he paused briefly at the door, taking one last breath of stillness with him. The shop greeted him like an old friend. Inside, everything was exactly as he had left it. He opened the curtains, letting the morning light spread gently across the shelves. Dust motes floated lazily in the air. He smiled softly and began his familiar ritual, straightening, folding, aligning. As the day unfolded, something felt slightly different. Customers arrived as usual, but they lingered longer. Conversations stretched gently. One person shared a memory of a childhood bedtime routine. Another spoke quietly about how sleep felt harder than it used to. The pajama salesman listened to them all, offering comfort not just through fabric, but through presence. Near midday, a woman entered carrying a small box. She looked unsure, holding it close to her chest. "It was here last night," she said softly. "I wanted to return something." The salesman nodded kindly. "Of course." She opened the box to reveal a neatly folded pair of pajamas. "They were wonderful," she said. "Too wonderful. Actually, I slept so deeply I missed my alarm." She laughed gently. "Not upset at all? I don't think I need to return them. I just wanted to say thank you." The salesman smiled, warm and genuine. "I'm glad they helped." She left lighter than she arrived, and the shop seemed to glow a little brighter. In the afternoon, a delivery arrived, new stock, carefully packed. The salesman unpacked it slowly, one box at a time. Each new pair of pajamas felt like a quiet promise, waiting to be fulfilled. He arranged them thoughtfully, grouping textures and colors that felt harmonious together. As evening approached, clouds gathered outside, thick and low. Rain began to fall, not heavily, but steadily. The sound was soothing, tapping gently against the windows. The shop felt especially peaceful in the rain. A man entered, shaking water from his coat. He looked tired, deeply so, but not unhappy. "Just worn down. I walk at night when I can't sleep," he said. "Tonight, the rain brought me here." The pajama salesman nodded. Rain has a way of guiding people. The man smiled faintly and wandered the shop, eventually choosing a dark, simple pair of pajamas. "They feel grounding," he said. "That's important," the salesman replied. After he left, the rain softened to a drizzle. The sky darkened early, and streetlights flickered on, reflecting off the wet pavement. As closing time neared, the pajama salesman moved through the shop, preparing it for rest. The sign was turned. The lights dimmed. The quiet deepened. But he did not feel tired. Instead, he felt full of calm, of small moments, of quiet connections. This was what he loved about his work. He didn't change the world. He helped people rest inside it. One last customer arrived just before closing. It was a young woman with a notebook tucked under her arm. She looked hesitant, as though she wasn't sure she should come in at all. "I write at night," she said, "but lately, I can't seem to stop thinking long enough to sleep." The pajama salesman considered this carefully. He chose a pair of pajamas with a slightly heavier fabric, soft but steady. "These are good for quiet endings," he said. "They help you close the page." She smiled, understanding exactly what he meant. When she left, the rain had stopped completely. The air outside felt clean and still. The pajama salesman locked the door and stood inside the dim shop, listening. The shelves seemed to hum softly. Satisfied, he turned off the final light and stepped into the night. As he walked home, he imagined the town settling again. Lights turning off. Beds warming. Pajamas slipping into place like familiar friends. And somewhere, sleep was finding everyone slowly, gently, right on time. The following days moved forward with a softness that felt almost deliberate. The town seemed to have learned something from the quiet rhythm of the pajama shop, as if calm were contagious. Mornings unfolded without urgency, and evenings settled earlier. Like a gentle agreement between the sky and the streets below, the pajama salesman noticed it first in the way people walked past his window, slower steps, fewer hurried glances at their phones, longer pauses beneath the street. When he opened the shop each afternoon, he felt as though he were opening a small pocket of stillness in the middle of the day. Inside, the shelves remained perfectly arranged, but the air felt warmer now, more familiar. The shop had always been peaceful, but lately it carried something else, too, a sense of belonging. People didn't just come to buy pajamas anymore. They came to breathe. One evening, as the light outside dimmed into soft gold, the bell chimed, and a woman entered, carrying a folded letter. She looked nervous, smoothing the paper again and again with her fingers. "I don't need pajamas today," she said quickly, as if afraid she might be misunderstood. "I just wanted to say something." The pajama salesman smiled gently. "You're always welcome." She unfolded the letter and read a few lines aloud, her voice quiet but steady. It was about sleep, how it had once felt unreachable, how nights had stretched too long and heavy. And then it spoke of finding the shop, of pulling on a soft pair of pajamas, and finally resting without fear. "I don't know why it worked," she said softly, folding the letter again. "But it did." He nodded. "Sometimes comfort arrives in small forms." She left the letter on the counter before she went. and the pajama salesman placed it carefully in a drawer beneath the register. He didn't read it again. He didn't need to. The feeling of it stayed with him. As the week passed, patterns emerged. A man who came every Thursday for the same navy blue pajamas. A student who stopped by just to sit quietly for a few minutes before heading home. A couple who returned together, laughing softly, choosing matching sets without saying a word. The pajama salesman welcomed them all with the same calm presence. He never hurried anyone. He never asked questions that weren't offered freely. His gift was not advice or solutions. It was space. One night, the power flickered just after sunset. The lights dimmed, then went out entirely. The shop fell into darkness, but not the uncomfortable kind. The windows still held the glow of streetlights, and the shelves became gentle shapes in the dim. Without hesitation, the pajama salesman lit a few candles from beneath the counter and placed them carefully around the room. The soft flames transformed. The shop shadows danced slowly along the walls, and the air seemed to settle even deeper into quiet. The bell chimed. A family stepped inside. 2 parents and a child, bundled in a coat too big for them. The child's eyes widened at the candlelight. "It's like a story," the child whispered. The salesman smiled. "It is." A little sleigh moved slowly through the shop, the child holding a candle briefly under careful supervision. Delighted by the way the light flickered, the parents chose pajamas meant for warmth and comfort. And when they left, the child waved goodbye, like they were leaving a place they wanted to remember. After they were gone, the pajama salesman stood alone among the candles, listening to the soft, quiet. Lapao returned soon after, but he left the candles burning until closing time. The night seemed to prefer it that way. Later, as he prepared to close, he noticed something unusual. A small stack of folded pajamas sat neatly on the counter, pairs he hadn't placed there himself. He frowned slightly, then relaxed. Somehow, the shop had begun to take care of itself. As days turned into nights, the pajama salesman began to feel a gentle shift inside himself as well. He had always slept well, but now his rest felt deeper, more complete. He dreamed less, or perhaps more peacefully. When he woke, it felt like surfacing from warm water rather than being pulled from sleep. One night he dreamed of the shop. In the dream, the shelves stretched farther than they ever had in waking life. Rows of pajamas extended into a soft distance, glowing faintly. People walked through slowly, choosing comfort without speaking. Outside, the world rested, held together by quiet breaths and gentle nights. He woke with a calm smile and carried that feeling with him through the day. That evening, a familiar customer returned, the man who used to walk at night when he couldn't sleep. He looked different now, lighter. "I don't walk as much anymore," the man said. "I sleep." The pajama salesman nodded. "I'm glad. I think this place helped," the man added. The salesman considered this. "I think you helped yourself," he said kindly. The man smiled, accepted that answer, and left without buying anything. Near closing time, a young person entered hesitantly, hands tucked into their sleeves. They stood quietly near the door, as if unsure whether to stay. "You're welcome to take your time," the pajama salesman said. "I don't need pajamas," they said softly. "I just needed somewhere quiet." The salesman nodded and gestured toward a small chair near the window. "You can sit," they did, watching the street outside as the sky darkened. They didn't speak again, and neither did he. After a while, they stood, thanked him, and left with a calmer expression than when they arrived. When the shop was empty once more, the pajama salesman locked the door and turned off the lights slowly. One by one, he stood in the dim glow of the last lamp, taking in the space, the shelves, the counter, the air filled with unspoken peace. This place was no longer just a shop. It was a pause, a breath, a soft landing at the end of the day. He stepped outside and closed the door gently behind him. The street was quiet, the night deep and kind. As he walked home, he felt certain of one thing. As long as people needed rest, this place would be here, and the night, patient and steady, would continue to welcome everyone one quiet moment. A time. As this gentle story begins to fade into the quiet of the night, let yourself stay right here for a moment longer. There is no rush, no next task waiting. Just the calm space you've created by listening, breathing, and allowing your thoughts to slow. If this story brought you even a small sense of comfort, let that feeling settle deeper. You don't need to hold on to every word, just the calm it leaves behind. Let your shoulders soften, let your jaw unclench. Let the weight of the day gently fall away. If you're listening as part of your bedtime routine, allow this to be your signal to rest. Turn down the lights, get comfortable. Maybe pull your blanket a little closer and take one slow, steady breath in and out. Sleep doesn't need to be chased. It arrives naturally when we make space for it. If you enjoyed this cozy sleep story, you're warmly invited to stay with us. Like this video so others searching for rest can find it too. Subscribe to the channel for more gentle bedtime stories, calming narratives, and peaceful escapes designed to help you unwind, relax, and drift into deep, natural sleep. You can return anytime you need a quiet place, whether it's the end of a long day, a restless night, or a moment when the world feels a bit too loud. These stories will always be here, waiting softly. For now, let the night do its work. Let the story fade. Let sleep come easily. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with us. Sweet dreams and good night.